A few years ago, in researching my new novel, A Sparrow Could Fall and Heaven Would Be Silent, it's a story about a small country church that fights a white supremacist group in its community. I read a few black authors because I wanted to attempt to capture the real heart and voice of the African American families in my story. Well, I was humbled by what I read. One of the books was called Winning the Race to Unity by an author named Clarence Schuler, a family conference speaker. Schuler was a student athlete back in the 1970s. He was one of 12 black athletes at Moody College. And in his book, he writes what it was like to be completely ignored by all the white Christians on campus. Wouldn't even talk to him. That is, until he started playing basketball and winning a few games for Moody. It was a saying in the black community back then that sports has the ability to take a black from the outhouse to the penthouse. One of the things that Schuler mentioned in the book is that white evangelicals come up to him all the time and say they don't have a prejudice bone in their body, that they're colorblind. But how is that really possible, Schuler asks. We notice color all the time. You know, the color of your eyes, the color of your hair. I check my sweater. Haven't I used this before for a podcast? If my beard gets a little skunky, I add some hair dye. We notice color in all these areas of our lives. Is it really true that we wouldn't notice it when it comes to our skin color? As for racial attitudes, Schuler asks, is it even really possible to say that we're free of all racial prejudice? Your son or daughter comes in the house and introduces you to their new boyfriend or girlfriend who happens to be of another skin color. How would you act? Schuler asks. Or down at the office, if you work for an affirmative action employer and you meet the new African American guy down in billing department that they've just hired, what would you think? Our cultural experience in the United States, simply because of our history, is so charged with racial overtones. Is it really possible that we can say we're free of it altogether? Not even the Apostle Paul, for all his progressive understanding of what Christ accomplished for us on the cross when it came to race relations, not even Paul was free of it. In his letter to Titus, a young pastor on the island of Crete, Paul writes to him, you know, every one of their own prophets says that Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, and lazy gluttons. And then Paul says, this testimony is true. Oh, come on, Paul. Every one of them? It's just in us, by nature, by sin, instinct. What is it? This attraction to those that are like us, and this aversion or awkwardness around those that are different from us. Charlton Heston wrote in his biography that when they were filming the original Planet of the Apes, which was a far superior film by far over the remake, just saying, but he noticed that on breaks on the set, the chimpanzees would sit with the chimpanzees, the gorillas with the gorillas, and the orangutans would chum with the orangutans. What's up with that? Clarence Schuler would ask us another question. While you yourself may be free of unkind thoughts or inaccurate thoughts about members of other races, how do you react when you see members of other races suffer injustice? Does it bother you enough to where you would do something or say something or be inconvenienced? Or do you just kind of shrug your shoulders and say, ooh, too bad for them. I'll have to remember to pray for that. Racism does not have to be outward hatred. It can be passive neglect. It was refusing to speak up during World War II when knowledge of the maltreatment of the Jews began to surface. It was white evangelical Christians failing to rally behind Martin Luther King and his people as they were being shoved to the back of buses, denied simple hospitality at hotels and restaurants, and set upon by attack dogs and fire hoses. It's suburban Christians looking the other way when drug trafficking devastates the inner city. Drug trafficking that is largely funded by dope peddlers and people who live in the suburbs. So what can we do differently to make a difference, to burn these attitudes out of us, to honor Christ? Charles Schuler would challenge us to ask ourselves three questions. Am I willing to know the other's history? Secondly, am I willing to know the other's experience? And thirdly, perhaps most importantly, Am I willing to reach out to the other? In my next podcast, I'll be exploring my answers to these three questions. I invite you to begin thinking about it right now. Now, this story I've written, A Sparrow Could Fall, is my attempt to reach out, to build a bridge, to wrestle with these three questions that Schuler is raised. I'll be posting a chapter a week to my website. I invite you to journey along and read the story, and please let me know of your feedback. Not only if you like the story, but do you think I'm accurately reflecting the racial tension that exists in our society today? And am I bringing to the surface thoughts and ideas on how we can take steps toward healing with one another? I look forward to talking with you more.